Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Darshawn McAway. You're tuned in to Wow Podcast. By all means, go to wowpodcast.me. That's wowpodcast.me. Now, today we have a special guest. We have Melinda Curtis. She's here to talk to us about her book, Thankfully in Love, and A Very Merry Match. Melinda, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. And you pronounced that title really well. It's a tongue twister, isn't it?
It is.
3 times fast.
So let's talk about A Very Merry Match. Let's talk about that book first.
Well, this is a small town romantic comedy series that I'm writing for Forever Romance, which is based on 3 elderly matchmaking widows who played poker to decide who they're going to matchmake next. So it's filled with, small town charm and community, but it's also filled with the things that you like about a rom-com, which are, unexpected situations that, put people on the spot and lead to humor.
What made you decide to start writing about rom-coms?
I really love writing rom-coms because I love to people watch. And I love to have a little giggle at myself when something happens. I tend to try to laugh about it, I think and especially nowadays, it's really a mood lifter to try to write something that brings people a smile.
When I think about people who write romance novels, I think about serial daters. Were you ever a serial dater?
No, never. In fact, I've been with my husband now for probably over half my life. That's when you get to that point in time, you're like, wow, okay, I do know what makes a good romance and makes love last. At least I hope my husband would say the same thing. But no, never a serial dater.
Never a serial dater. So how many books have you written throughout your lifetime?
I have written around 60, I think, that are I've either have been published, or I've written and have yet to come out.
So would your husband say that you are a hopeless romantic since you write romance novels?
Never. He would never say that about me.
Actually, what would he say about you?
He would say that I work too hard and he has to be the hopeless romantic in the relationship to kind of get me, back into the world around me.
Very interesting. So you are part of Thankfully in Love. Can you tell me a little bit more about Thankfully in Love?
Well, Thankfully in Love is a collection of 4 romances written by 4 different authors, all around the theme of Thanksgiving. So they're all set around that holiday.
And what happens during Thankfully in Love?
Everyone's story is different, so there's a little bit of everything. There's a little bit of romantic suspense. There's a medical story about a doctor and a woman who's going blind. There's also, mine is a romantic comedy about a couple who's falling in love, and there's also a Saint Bernard involved who has these magic ginger snap cookies that if you eat his ginger snap dog cookies, you can actually hear what he's thinking.
Gotcha. So since COVID-19, what are your general thoughts about life moving forward now?
I think everybody dies, and this is really a tragic thing that's happening in the world, not just in the U.S. And I think that what we all have to remember is you have to live a good life. And I try to have that as a theme in a lot of my books is, take a chance. I don't know if you want to be as serious as saying, hit your bucket list, but, do the things that you dream of and really live a full life.
Are you getting a chance to hit your bucket list?
Well, right now, my husband and I moved into a fixer-upper house a few months ago, and so I'm hoping that we'll be able to get out in the world again when COVID clears up and when we're done with the house. But right now, it's more like I'm living in a dusty construction bubble.
When people first meet you, what's their first impression of you?
Oh, goodness. I recently have been delving with an author coach into things like Myers-Briggs and Gallup-Clifton Strengths to try to identify, who I am, go deeper into that level psychologically. And I think people see me first as kind of maybe a balanced individual, maybe non-threatening, I want to say, that
Right.
then, the layers that you uncover as you uncover when you're, reading a book or watching a movie and you uncover different aspects of someone's character, then you find the kind of wry humor underneath and a real caring for people in the world.
Gotcha. So what's been your most disappointing moment in publishing any sort of book?
Oh my goodness. If you want to get into publishing or the entertainment industry, you really have to have a thick skin. I was asked to write a new series for a publisher who shall remain unnamed, and I wrote up what's called a proposal. So I wrote a partial of the story and an overall outline, a synopsis of how several books would go, and they thought that was great, but before they would sign a contract with me, they wanted me to write the first book in total. So I wrote the first book in total, and then they had me do revisions over the course of a 2-year period, revisions, and then they said, you know what, we just bought another series that's kind of like this now. They had been looking and they said they wanted me to write it. I was like crushed because, I felt like they had been leading me along on this string, for years, and then went with someone else. And I was like, oh, I'm so crushed. And then immediately when my agent put it out on the market, it was snapped up by another publisher. So I was happy that it actually found a home because after, 3 years of working on it, I was emotionally invested, and, but the initial blow was just crushing.
How many different publishing companies are you working with?
I write for 3 different publishers, which is a little nutty, and I also write books that I put up on Amazon, just myself. So books that maybe traditional publishers are looking for one kind of story, and I tend to put like my full-blown romantic comedies out on Amazon because those are not selling so well right now. So they're more comedy than romance, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
So let's tell everyone where they could possibly catch up with you on social media and where they can go to purchase your books.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm available on all outlets through, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Google Play, iBooks, and I can be found on Facebook and Instagram. If you search Melinda Curtis or Melinda Curtis author, you can find me out there.
Do you have any inspiring words for anyone who's trying to get into publishing or possibly romance novels or rom-coms?
It's like any other profession. You really need to study and hone your craft and bring the energy and enthusiasm and be prepared to be, knocked a little, criticized a little, loved a little. You get it on all fronts, but don't be, if you want to write a book, become an author, don't be crushed if you don't, become 50 Shades of Grey right away. Don't be dissatisfied if you have, only a handful of readers that love you.
Well, I'm your host, Darshawn McAway. We're talking to author Melinda Curtis. She's a best-selling author. She's coming out with a book titled A Very Merry Match, and she's also a part of Thankfully in Love, the Anthology. Melinda, thank you so much for coming on to Wow Podcast.
All right. Thank you.